everybody, from Common Room Radio. I'm Sarah Kate Pazant, and I was coded to be 16.
I'm Alistair Stevens, and later, when Captain America asks me how it all went, I'll say, fine, normal. I mean, everything was normal.
And I'm Vinton Bain, and also, I am Vision of the Avengers. I have saved this planet 37 times. Each day you live, each breath you take, each beat of your heart, each is due to my actions 37 times over.
And welcome to Excelsior!
New idea for a podcast. We just let Vinton read comics.
Vinton Reads Comics, a podcast. Yes. So this week we are talking about Tom King's Vision series, and it was really great light reading. It was just a super happy, fun, family-friendly, great, like, walking on sunshine story where nothing bad happened and everyone lived happily ever after.
Fluffy,
I
I think
believe
is the word.
in the letter pages, Tom King said, one day I'm going to write an issue of the Vision that ends happy with them all sitting around the dinner table and Wolverine's brought back from the dead. And he says, oh yes, hi, I'm Wolverine. I'm back from the dead too. And the kids go, oh, is that Wolverine? And the mother goes, yes, don't tell him he's a robot too now.
So you've been telling me about this comic series, Vinton, for, months, I think, for quite some time. And you kept going on and on about just how good it was. And, like, I believed you, like, because I believe pretty much everything you say, like, just implicitly. But I was not emotionally prepared for this.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not good at emotionally preparing people for things. I should probably have mentioned, hey, this book will take your heart and tear it out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's at this point we should probably mention this podcast will be filled with spoilers. If
so
you
many
don't
spoilers.
want spoilers, you should read the comics and then come back. If you don't mind spoilers, feel free to listen and then go enjoy the comic because it is good enough that spoilers won't hurt how great this story is.
For sure. This is an amazing story.
The comic kind of spoils itself.
Mm-hmm.
There are
kind of
moments
does.
of anticipation in its first act, which point toward the inevitable grim conclusion. And even as you're moving through the setup for this story,
Yes.
you can't escape that oppressive feeling that something is about to go very badly indeed.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's enormously powerful, particularly in this suburban setting. So, Vinton, how did you find this comic? How did it cross your path?
Well, I often go to the comic book store. And
Really?
I walked into a comic book store and saw that the first issue of a new Vision series had come out. Mm-hmm. And I've always enjoyed Vision. Lately, of course, he was not used very much. But I saw this amazing cover by Mike Del Mundo, whose artwork knows no ends to its beauty. He does all the covers for the series and is currently working on Avengers, and everything he does is just belongs in the museum.
Oh, wow.
And so I saw the cover of the family coming out of the door, and I said, well, I don't know what this is, but I need it in my life. And after reading issue 1, I was like, well, gonna buy all of those. Gonna go ahead and just buy all of them right now. Who can I pay now to have all of them? And how much do you require for me to have all of them now? So, I fell in love immediately. And since we already said spoilers, very much like Victor in the comic, my heart was torn out.
Yes, straight up ripped out. We do that a lot to androids in Marvel, it seems like.
We like doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I mean, it's very affecting, you know.
What was your experience with Vision prior to this series?
Prior, he was mostly he'd show up in my Avengers comics growing up and being really into 80s comics, reading West Coast Avengers and all of those type of things. I was really into him from there. And of course, playing the old arcade game where you got to be Vision and the old Avengers arcade game. That was really where I grew attached to the character. He was my favorite one to play.
So, how much do you... so having read this, again, most of my knowledge about all of these characters is going to be coming from the MCU and from the films and things like that. And so this iteration of Vision is very different from the Paul Bettany Vision that I have grown to know and love.
Had a lot more character growth.
I mean, there's a lot going on. I mean, Wanda Maximoff shows up in this comic, which I got super excited about. Love me some Scarlet Witch. And of course, I'm just like, there is like... Comics are fucking bonkers, you guys. What is going? Like, okay, can either of you give me like a rundown of like comic Visions, like where, like what? How did Vision?
No, that is impossible. Vision is one of the most complicated characters you're ever going to encounter. Yeah. The original Vision was actually a Golden Age character. He's one of the very few characters who has survived from the Golden Age. The Human Torch, Namor the Submariner, kind of Captain America, though that's a little bit complicated. But he was a timely comics character in the 1940s. When Stan Lee launched the Marvel Universe in the early 60s, he wanted to bring in the Vision, but they had to effectively reboot the character. The original Vision was this multi-dimensional police officer, effectively.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cool.
Doesn't really bear a connection with the Vision that we see now. When the Vision came back as a synthesoid, as an android originally, he was introduced as this enigma. He was introduced as a mystery. He was one of the otherworldly elements that made the Avengers the team that they were at the time. Later, we found out that he was based on the rebuilt body of the original Human Torch, the android Human Torch from the Golden Age.
Yep.
Yeah.
No connection to the Fantastic Four Human Torch except the name.
What?
This is an android that was built in the Golden Age of comics in the early before Marvel time, in the Timely Comics time. And he was just an experiment that could light himself on fire. And there's my favorite story of his ever is in the Marvels series, where they go back and touch on some of those things with amazing artwork and amazing storytelling and talk about him being buried, and it's really great. But you won't ever see that character show up in comics nowadays, really, except in the form of Vision, who bears his body and bears the mind waves, mindy, windy, whatever that might be, of Wonder Man, who was deceased at the time, was created by Ultron through the melding of those two things, not any of the Infinity Gems like you see in the movies.
Right.
So, very complicated. He's died multiple times, come back multiple times, been wiped clean into a clean slate of an android type of person, and then given his memories back, given his emotions back. Did either of you read the prologue to this?
I did.
I did.
A short story.
I didn't get to it.
Just a quick note on that. It is Vision coming to Scarlet Witch Wanda, who is at home cooking in this lovely scene, and he expresses to her that he's been having problems lately. He's seeing ghosts, essentially. He's because of the emotions attached to the memories and because of his synthezoid being, he has a perfect memory. Remembers everything he's ever done, everyone he's ever saved, every tragedy he's ever encountered. And they're starting to meld together because the emotions are pulling them forth at wrong times. And he has having a hard time of telling what's real and what's not. He'll be at the Avengers Mansion and see Captain America walk by and say something to him and realize, oh, you're not actually there. And this was fine. And he could deal with that until it came to him trying to save people. And then he would see different tragedies and different people he saved overlapping, and he wouldn't be able to save people because, well, that person's not there, and I just tried to save them, and therefore that person to the left died. And so he's like, I have to do something about this. And so he goes to Wanda, who is the closest emotional tie to his memories. So if he's going to eliminate emotional tied memories, she will be the perfect test to know if it worked. And so in a heartbreaking scene, he starts to wipe his emotional memories as he's talking to her, and she's like, what are you doing? And then he clearly has nothing for her, stares at her and leaves.
Well, and it's really cool the way that they do it, because in the artwork, you see that he's talking with Wanda, but then you also see like these phantasms of previous Wandas, like sporting her various other like Scarlet Witch uniforms throughout the ages. And as the comic is going on, as you're going through these panels and as Vision is explaining what he's doing, each of those Wandas starts disappearing until they're all gone. And it's just like current present day Wanda. And she's yelling, what have you done? What have you done? What did you do? And then he's basically just like, I'm fixed now. I got rid of, this was the ultimate test and everything is fine. And I don't have to see you anymore. And he feels nothing for her anymore. And it's really hard to see. I really, really like Wanda and Vision together. And so it's very heartbreaking to have to see that thing.
We should say that it's kind of difficult to talk about Vision without talking about Wanda too. Vision was introduced in the modern Marvel Universe in the Avengers number 57 in October of 1968, in Avengers number 75 in April of 1970. So he'd only been around for 2 years. Wanda returns to the Avengers. And they pretty much immediately pair up. And that's the defining relationship for Vision's entire comic book career, and arguably for Wanda too. It's heartbreaking to see. And that speaks to like the core metaphor. This comic book has done the thing that I turn to comic books for, which is that it's a fantastic story that leverages all of this history, that leverages all of these amazing characters, that just works in the moment, but also works on this metaphorical level. Because this is also a book that is about starting over. It is also a book that is about getting over failed relationships and about redefining yourself as you move forward. And that's incredibly powerful and heartbreaking and destructive and awful. And this book, you guys,
it's really good.
Yeah, and issue 7 does touch on a lot of the history between Wanda and Vision. It is basically a full issue of flashbacks recounting some of these things that have gone on between them and the history they've had and the children that they had that didn't actually really fully exist.
Right,
and the complications thereof. So yeah, lots of history to cover there. Before we actually jump into the story, I just wanted to mention Tom King is a comic book writer writing for DC right now. Who's mostly written for DC and wrote this, of course, for Marvel, is an ex-CIA officer, which is very interesting.
What?
So he has a lot of knowledge of how government works, and he studied to be a lawyer. His wife became a lawyer, so he has a lot of knowledge on different political type things that he has done before and had his hands dipped into. So he comes from a really interesting perspective when it comes to writing that I really appreciate. He is currently writing Batman for DC, and I recommend that because it's a very interesting take on Batman as well.
He was notable for writing Grayson prior to that, which is a series that I've heard really great things about. This is basically
super original take on
This
Nightwing.
is Super Spy Nightwing, which is I'm there for that. I'm going to read that based on this. I'm definitely going to read.
Oh, for sure.
Everything that he's written because he hasn't actually written that much.
No, yeah.
So yeah, I'll be looking up his older stories.
Yeah,
For sure.
So this is perhaps the most original story that Marvel has done in years. And it's definitely one of my favorites. Just to read a quick solicit synopsis of what this story is for people that aren't familiar with it, to get them adjusted to what the story is. It's the Vision wants to be human, and what's more human than family? He goes to the laboratory where he was created, where Ultron molded him into a weapon, where he first rebelled against his given destiny, where he first imagined that he could become more, that he could do good, and that he could be a man, a normal, ordinary man. And he builds them, a wife, Virginia, 2 teenage twins, Viv and Vin. They look like him. They have his powers. They share his grandest ambition, or perhaps obsession, the unrelenting need to be ordinary. Behold, the Visions. They're the family next door, and they have the power to kill us all. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh, man. So we three have been on a couple of different podcasts before where we talk about like just how important like family is to us and like family stories and like how those really really affect us. And this story was no different. Oh man!
Except unlike found family, which is traditionally the trope that we go to, this is a consciously created.
Yeah,
family.
like a built from the ground up, a literally constructed family, which is really interesting. Yeah.
And you're given the different perspectives of the different family members to see this family from. So from the kid's perspective, you can see growing up in a family that you didn't ask for and things happening around you that you didn't ask for and you don't want.
Right.
And to know what that feels like, because we are born into families that we don't get to choose. Things happen in those families that we don't always want.
Right, exactly.
And so that's a really interesting perspective from it. And then to see the father who is trying his best to hold his family together, to get some sense of normalcy. And of course, I'm not a father yet, but I've seen this in fathers that this is something that they do quite often. And the mother who is willing to do anything to protect her family. And sometimes you don't know what the best thing to do is.
Yeah.
And so these interesting perspectives are wonderful.
I completely agree. We discover in the course of the story that the origin of each of these characters is subtly different. We know that Vision was created by Ultron, but really he has been molded by the brainwaves of Wonder Man, and that turns into a significant plot point through the first arc.
Yes.
We also learn that Virginia was created based on the brainwaves of Wanda Maximoff.
Yes, which I loved.
It makes a lot of sense as you're reading the book,
sure
you guys.
Does. Yeah. Here's the thing. I love Wanda Maximoff. I love the Scarlet Witch. One of my favorite things about her is that she's so powerful she could destroy the entire universe just like whenever, when she's just having like a bad hair day or whatever.
Yeah, just exclaim no more mutants and the mutants just stop being.
And then Logan
no
happens.
more bad hair day.
So and so I'm really into that. But I mean, like, to see whenever you see this conversation that Wanda is having with Vision, and she's like, maybe this can be, we found that, Hank Pym found this thing. It's basically the mind gem, but it's not. And giving him this little piece that has her brainwaves in it, and I'm just like, girl, this is a terrible, miserable idea. Like, what are you thinking? It's also really interesting that the way that he chose to make his children was like making them twins also. And, that makes me think of like Billy and Tommy and how like, just like every like set of children around him has ever been just like a set of twins. And it was really fascinating and interesting to see that. And also, I mean, just like what you were saying, Alistair, absolutely, you see how how that ends up affecting Virginia and like the choices that she makes and the things that she does. And you're just like, okay, all right. Yeah, no, I get this now. I see now.
Particularly because Viv and Vin are created from the melding of the brainwaves of Vision and Virginia. They are, in a very real sense, they're children, or at least the amalgamation of these two personalities. Right. And they are crucially immature. They are going to develop and grow in a way that Vision and presumably Virginia never will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's just fantastic as a focus for this, what is in some sense a story of suburban desperation. I mean, this is the story of people who are just trying to lead a normal life and struggling. The struggles here, of course, are larger than life. The struggles here are very specific to Vision and his experience, but I think that we can all identify with that impulse. You know, you move into the new town and you're checking out the neighbors and you're worried how they're judging you. They're worried how they're feeling toward you. Your kids are struggling in school. This is, I think, in its most powerful, a very specific kind of depiction of mundane life. The life that Vision wants, this life of normalcy, is heartbreaking and impossible and just demands all that he has. One of my favorite sequences in the entire book is when he's taking the phone call from Virginia.
Yes, while he's fighting Giganto.
As he and the Avengers are fighting Giganto.
Yes.
And it is the perfect combination. I mean, I haven't seen anything that good, that acute, because superhero couples, superhero families generally fight together. They're generally less interested in this suburban mundanity. The Fantastic Four don't really have to deal with this kind of thing.
Right.
Even when they have kids. But this is beautifully juxtaposed. I think it works just so well.
I completely agree.
One of my favorite parts, talking about the brainwaves of Wanda being imprinted onto Virginia, is when we see as it's going through that she does search her brainwaves, her preloaded memories, and it mentions that she often finds parts that make her cry, but they don't talk about what those are. And then issue 7 brings all those flashbacks. And then we learn in, I think it's issue 11, that all those flashbacks are the memories she goes to.
Yeah.
And that those are implanted in her. And those are the things she sees. And it just brings so much more relevance to issue 7, where it starts off with Vision in bed with Wanda telling the joke about the toaster.
Which is a great joke.
Yes,
I love that joke.
It's a good joke.
And then it ends with him in bed with Virginia telling the same joke, but there's not the laughter. There's not the continuance. It just ends there in silence as they sit in bed together, knowing that something is not the same and something is not right, even though she has the same brainwaves imprinted.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, gosh, can you imagine like what Virginia must be going through? Like whenever she's encountering these memories where it's like, these aren't my memories, but they are my memories. They're affecting me as though they were mine, but I wasn't there. Like, I mean, just how messed up. And then again, the Scarlet Witch's memories of anyone's. Like,
not just these aren't my memories. These are the memories of the guy that my husband is trying to get over.
Yeah.
These are like this was the love of his life. That has ended, and I have been created in her image.
Yes.
Virginia is, for me, I think, the tragic figure at the heart of this story.
Absolutely.
She's just impossibly fragile and beautiful, and obviously enormously powerful too. That combination works wonders for me. And I guess speaks to this core idea that though we talk about normalcy, though we talk about mundanity, what we're really talking about is humanity. We're talking about this complicated, messy conflict of human emotion, that Wanda can simultaneously laugh at the joke and be heartbroken and be, you know, titanically powerful as well as Wanda is. Virginia can't do those things. She can't inhabit that conflicted space because she's not human.
Yeah.
And Vision can't understand it because he's not human. And as is the case so often, we turn to non-human characters in speculative fiction so we can really talk about humanity.
Right.
That's why we have Spock. That's why we have Data. That's why we, you know, these characters want to be human as a means of our own exploration of our humanity.
Yes.
And it's, as is so often the case, heartbreaking.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that the book does really well is talk about what it is like to be an outsider, what it is like to be viewed as different. And because of a family of synthezoids moving in, of course, you get that perfect opening with George talking about these are robots, they're toasters. What are they? They're not humans. And then you get the boys spray painting on the garage door, and they can't even think of a good thing to call
they don't have
them
like
to be
a
hateful.
slur.
They have to like Google it and just pick the best sounding one.
That's one of the best pages in the entire series. They know all the words, very specific words that can define other people. They're good boys, so they don't use them, but they know them. That is what a fantastic perspective on suburban life and on, you know, diversity in suburbia. That's God, so powerful.
And then the principal saying, your children are guns. You know what I would do if a child brought a gun into my school?
Yeah.
Your children are guns.
Yeah.
And just that idea of this is different. This is what it's like to be a person of color. This is what it's like to be a minority. And it speaks to our current political climate and building walls and not allowing foreigners in and the way that we view people with different religious creeds than us. And man, it's just so impactful the way that you can take, because of a science fiction and fantasy, that we can take these characters, these robots, and apply just this broad stroke of, look, this is everything other
Yeah.
in the way that it is treated.
Yeah.
And it also gives Vision this means of leveraging his own identity, his own history. Here he is trying to lead this normal life. But every time he encounters conflict, every time someone pushes back, society pushes back against him, he gets to pull out, I am Vision of the Avengers. I have saved the world 37 times. That is not normal. He is leveraging his privilege there.
Right.
I mean, that's a loaded word, but very specific Vision-related privilege.
Yes.
Right? He's able to power through these obstacles that other people in this circumstance would not be able to overcome.
Yeah.
And that in itself, I think, speaks to the fragility of this core idea. There is a powerful streak in American storytelling, in American contemporary mythology of suburbia. This goes back to, the vision of these perfect American neighborhoods in the 1950s.
Sure.
It goes back to things like, the Stepford Wives. It goes back to the preservation of appearance, the facsimile of community. As long as we all just behave ourselves and everyone is polite and nice, these communities will grow and they will flourish and everything will be okay. Just please let everything be okay. I think that what this book does with specific regard to that strand of specifically American thought is subversive, is progressive, is anarchic, is incredible. Because the way that we disassemble those notions of community, those notions of family, those notions of propriety, those notions of conformity is astonishing. And we get to do it all because Vision is, at the end of the day, still Vision.
Yes.
And that would be true if any member of the Avengers was trying to raise a family on this street.
Sure.
I love it.
Yeah.
What did you guys think about how in every, each discrete issue, there was a discrete narrator? We hopped from narrator to narrator for different issues. How did that work for you guys?
I found it really interesting that through the first, I think maybe even the first 6 issues, not until the very end of the first 6 issues, you found out who the narrator was. You're just left to assume, it's just a general narrator.
Sure.
And maybe it was for some of that time. We were not given a specific amount of time of when it was actually Agatha, but it's revealed at the end that this is Agatha informing the Avengers. This is what happened to the Vision. This is what's going on with his family. And I've seen the future and it's horrible.
Yes.
And we need to do something.
Yeah.
And so it's a really interesting reveal. And then, of course, later it's going to come up that you'll have Wanda being a narrator at one point. You'll have Virginia being a narrator. And then, of course, you'll have just this generic narrator. And we're not quite sure if it's somebody speaking or if this is just Tom King narrating over the story. I will say Tom King's narrative voice is spectacular and makes
so
this
good.
comic.
Yeah. Oh, it
so
totally does.
good.
Can you give us a gloss of Agatha Harkness?
No.
I can give a very
the thing.
brief one,
Please.
a very brief,
Yeah.
limited one. Everything I know about Agatha Harkness comes from the most recent Scarlet Witch run, which was written by James Robinson. And that series only has about 15 issues in it. It was kind of a short run. It was actually really kind of neat. It's this whole Wanda Maximoff is basically being a supernatural PI and trying to figure out what's wrong with magic and witchcraft, which was kind of cool. And they had a different artist for every issue, which was also relatively neat. But Agatha Harkness plays a big role in there. And so Agatha was this woman who was, she's a witch. She's a very, very powerful witch. And she is the woman who trained Wanda to be a witch. And she shows up as a ghost a lot of the times. In fact, the majority of the time, I think Wanda did something or was related to something that caused the death of Agatha Harkness, and now Agatha is walking around as a ghost, basically just haunting Wanda and being
Like she
"This
does
is your
in this
fault.
comic,
This
even.
is what this is what you got to put up with. You did this, and so now here I am." And sort of acts as her familiar and things like that. At the end of that series, Agatha actually does get her body back and comes back to life. But yeah, she's basically just this very, very powerful witch who is the woman who trained Wanda, and I guess occasionally shows up just as this, doom-speaking soothsayer whenever they need that to happen.
You definitely need a few of those hanging around.
Yeah.
the Marvel
Absolutely,
universe.
yeah.
I had just missed her in comics growing up, I guess, because she is in them. But I wasn't familiar with the character when she showed up in this, and I was like, oh, who is this? And I guess she was in West Coast Avengers. But when I grew up reading comics, you had whatever single issues you could find, and
Right.
often you had gaps. So you'd have issues 1, 2, 8, and 9,
Yeah.
and you just go, I just will fill in whatever happened between those issues because I don't have access to all the
Exactly.
comics ever online or in trade formats.
Yeah. Well, and comics have changed, enormously because of that
Absolutely.
exact phenomenon. Now, not only is everything available, but we're also now writing for the trade. And I wanted to ask you guys a little about that because this is a 12-issue run split into 2 volumes as we read it. Did you feel that there was a marked difference between volume 1 and volume 2? Did you get a sense of how the story arced there? Was there a point of inflection, or did it just read to you as a 12-issue story?
I think for me personally, it read as a 12-issue story. I mean, like, I don't feel like there was necessarily any kind of break or any sort of, like, you know how sometimes, like, you'll binge watch a TV show and then you're like, okay, I see why I probably should have watched this week to week. Like, I needed some space in between these episodes. I didn't feel that way with these issues. Like, it felt like just a single story and that I could read, like, from start to finish and not have, like, any problem or complication with it. Like, it just, that was the way that it was meant to be and how it was supposed to go. And I actually really enjoyed that about it.
I felt that there was a slight discontinuity between the two volumes, but only because issue 7 is the Scarlet Witch flashback issue.
Right.
And that is so very tonally different from everything we've had before. But then as you move through the second volume, I think it integrates better. I would actually prefer it in one volume.
That would be nice.
I think because I don't want to start the new book with the flashback issue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I only had, 20 minutes. I walked around, I got a cup of coffee, then I sat down and read volume 2, and it still felt a little jarring to move right into that. But
I specifically haven't bought it in trade format just for this reason, in hopes that they will release some kind of mini omnibus that will collect it all and have some bonus features in there as well.
With the prologue, something oversized with this gorgeous
that would be
art.
Perfect. Yeah. The prologue needs to be attached to this.
It really does. That prologue is so important. Yeah.
But yeah, it really helps see that Wanda, the Scarlet Witch, is really hovering over this whole story, and you don't really notice it until issue 7, but if you were to then return, you will see it so much deeper, I think.
Right.
And if you start out with that prologue, then you are given the idea already, like, this is the hidden character that is one of the main characters.
Well, and it's interesting because in that prologue, Vision is talking about how he's being haunted is the word that he uses. And then, you go through and you find out that Virginia is based on the brainwaves of the Scarlet Witch. Like, Vision even still is literally being haunted by the Scarlet Witch.
And even as we move into the story, we get this index of Vision's possessions, these things that he's accumulated over the years, all the various gifts. And we get the Everbloom.
Yes.
That is a gift from Wanda. And it's right there. And it's also enormous. And it keeps showing up in the art at these pivotal moments and oftentimes goes unremarked upon.
Yes.
But her presence is palpable. Her presence is haunted is exactly the right word, I think. It's just gorgeously done and
really,
restrained.
really wonderful.
And I have to commend Tom King on his mastery of dialogue. I feel like Vision's a really hard character to write.
Right.
And he did it beautifully.
So beautifully.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to slip into that kind of sesquipedalian, loquaciousness. This the idea that, he's a robot. So he uses 19-syllable words at every opportunity and everything is immaculately formed. But that's not it. Vision speaks precisely.
Yes.
And he says exactly what he means to. And all of the visions, I guess, speak precisely. One of my favorite parts in the entire book is the opening after George and his wife, whose name Nora. George and Nora have left. And Vision and Virginia are having this discussion about whether they seemed kind or nice.
Yes.
And which is more socially appropriate, the connotation associated with each one. That's so domestic. It's such a beautiful scene, and yet speaks to this otherworldly quality, this alien robotic quality that they share. The dialogue throughout is just impossibly good.
It's really, really good. Yeah. And it's interesting to see, even the way, like in that instance, especially where you've got Vision explaining to Virginia, no, you would say nice and not kind because of this and this. And it's almost like he's still teaching her. He's like, Vision is not human. He wants to be human. He made himself a robot family and wants them to be human and is teaching them how to be human, even though he isn't close at all to being there.
And the big picture problem, I think, with Vision's whole idea is that he's mimicking the routines and the interactions of human life, but without observing the underlying principles.
Yes.
The idea that they all get together at dinner time to talk around the dinner table as human families do, even though they don't need to eat. This is an observation of convention, not of purpose. It's not about, dinner, and it should be. It has to be about dinner. The idea that they lay down at night. They don't need to sleep.
Yeah.
But they'll lay down at night and power down and go through this mental defragging process that they go through. All of these things which seem to be fundamentally human, when they are replicated without foundation, come off as genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
The whole,
it's unnerving.
The cover art for this first issue of the suburban family waving through the door is so disquieting.
They never open the door. They always
never
just
open
phase
the door.
through it.
I can speak from firsthand experience, having started to play Vision in our other podcast, Earth 405, from Botchcast, that it's very hard to nail Vision's voice. Having played Spider-Man before, it's super easy. You just laugh at everything, you joke about everything, everything's funny. But for Vision, you have to speak to that everything has a purpose and everything is said on purpose.
Yes.
And it's so difficult to come up with that voice. So I definitely agree with you. Kudos to Tom King in his writing of Vision. To jump back just shortly to the question of the 2 volumes being split, Tom King in the letter pages actually mentioned that he approached this with the idea of writing a novel, and that he'd written novels before, and that was something he did before comics. And he was just coming off a comic run that got canceled, and he was thinking, well, this might get canceled too. So I will just write it as a 12-issue series. And then I guess as he was going, he just said, well, we're just going to cap it here. This is the story. I wrote this like a novel. It's all that it is, and it's all that it needs to be. And to continue it would just ruin it. Yeah. And so I think it does play that way to me with that flashback sequence inserted into the middle. It does change things, but it almost encourages you, like I mentioned before, to go back and see how that actually overshadows everything.
Oh, definitely.
All the way through.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think, too, that it's interesting you say that he wrote it as one story split over 12 issues because he really manages to observe like the conventions of comic book structure and pacing. We get a devastating final page in every single issue, and none of them are forced. There's no false cliffhanger in this entire story. It just naturally falls into this beautiful clockwork structure. Guy's pretty good.
He's really, really great.
He's got some chops. Do we want to move through the story as a whole? Do we want to talk about the beats as it unfolds?
That sounds great, yes.
So we begin with the first issue. Vision has set up home in Fairfax, Virginia. He is now the consultant to the president. So he's living in this commuter suburb where he and all of the other people on the street will commute into DC. They'll work for the government. They'll work for the president directly. It's this very quiet, kind of run-down neighborhood. I think we're led to believe at the beginning that no one has any money, but it doesn't matter because they're saving the world.
That's right.
Which is obviously very important language when we're talking about the Avengers and we're talking about Vision in particular. We're introduced to the family. We move through the first issue and everything seems... We could almost be setting up for a... quirky, this could almost be setting up a series like Third Rock from the Sun or
for
something.
Sure,
and you get that even with the first cover. It looks like the cover to like a sitcom DVD.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. But the end of the first issue is completely devastating because we come under attack by Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to read. Grim Reaper is also a very old Marvel
character.
Talk
to me a little, because that guy showed up and I was like, I don't know what this, I know this is terrible. I don't know why exactly.
The brother of Wonder Man. Which is why when he shows up, he says, you're not real and you took my brother's life.
Yes.
Okay. So Wonder Man.
Oh boy.
In brief, an ex of Wanda's?
Yes.
Okay, nailed it.
After Vision.
All right, but who hasn't she dated? I mean,
so
that's no slam on my girl. It's just everybody dates everybody in these comics.
Yeah, Wonder Man was a kind of generic superhero, as evidenced by the name, I suppose, who showed up in the early years of the Avengers. He was introduced in 1964, but appeared to die in that issue. 4 years later, he comes back. He kind of joins the team. He and Wanda have a thing. He's around for a while. He's never left like a super lasting impression on the Marvel Universe on the 616. I would argue that his most significant contribution to the 616 is Vision.
Okay.
So he's been around for a while, but around the time that he was introduced, his brother Eric was introduced. And he's just a bad guy. He's the black sheep of the family. He's trouble. He's hung out with the Lethal Legion and with Hydra and with the Horsemen of Death and the Sinister Six. So he's kind of been rolling around B-tier villain groups in the 616 ever since. This is, again, I would argue, the most powerful thing that we've ever seen him do. This is the most narratively powerful. This is the most impactful and important thing he's ever done. He's really good.
He's very, very good.
And unhinged.
Yeah, genuinely scary. Yeah. Like, this guy comes in, he's got this giant scythe on the end of his arm and is like, you see Viv walk into the kitchen and then the narrator tells us, and that's when the knife came through her. Yeah. And suddenly there's this giant scythe just through her middle, and it is horrifying.
Cut in twain.
Yes.
Yeah. And at the end of that first issue, when everything has been potentially, this could be fun. This could be a good story.
This could be cute.
I mean, it's a little haunting. It's a little oppressive. It's a little disturbing. But everything could be fine. This could be the story of how Vision gets his life together and lives happily ever. It's super not that story.
It's totally not that story. No, not at all.
Virginia, of course, reacts to Grim Reaper attacking her family with the cookie tray left by George and Nora, who is sometimes called Martha.
Yep, I noticed that too.
I wanted to say Martha. On the name. It's because they go back and forth. They change it to Martha the next time they appear, and she's called Martha repeatedly through the next few issues. But then when they mention her in a letter or something, I don't remember what it is, she's called Nora again somewhere else. And what's funny is the issue where she's called Martha for the first time came out just after Batman vs. Superman.
Everyone's mom's name is Martha.
You can't throw a rock without hitting a Martha.
Who has some sort of super son.
But the end of this issue, this first issue, is so impactful, and it just changes everything in those last few pages as Virginia uses the cookie tray and kills the Grim Reaper.
And she won't shit
stop
out of this dude. Yeah.
hitting him. And it takes Vin calling out to her to stop, to get her to realize what she's doing. And she just looks up and says, "Don't tell your father."
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's just so interesting the way that we get this call to the future in the narration of George and Martha, and their last
George and
thoughts
Mrs. George.
about how they're going. It tells us right there they're going to die in this comic.
Yeah.
They will die in a house fire, and their last thoughts. Nora's last thought specifically will be about this floating vase, why it was empty. In the last page states that the floating water vase of Zinlot are always empty. The methonic sulfite that causes the water to levitate is poisonous to all known species of flowers. And the mystery is then not why they are empty, but why anyone would ever make such a vase.
Why would anyone create a family that cannot be a family? That is itself toxic to the very notion of family and humanity.
The narration in this story has so many meanings.
Yeah.
It's so
every
deep.
bit of the storytelling.
So into it, of explaining everything about the story. You could take it at surface level or go 12 levels deep into it.
I'm sure there are a dozen things that I didn't catch as I was reading it, but the vase stood out to me immediately. I was lucky for that, because as you move through and you see people interacting with it, as Virginia interacts with it, particularly toward the very end of the story, it takes on a whole new meaning. She's severing it as she's interacting with it, and it's really good storytelling. I mean, this iconography is present right at the heart. It's completely consistent both with this vision of suburbia and with the vision with. I keep using the word vision, you guys. It's ironic. It's with this depiction of suburban life and the depiction of life as a synthesoid in the 616.
Yeah.
So we move to issue 2, where we see Vin is still going to school. Viv is. We're unsure if she's going to survive what had happened to her, and they're going to try to see if they can repair her, but they're not sure. And Vin is approached by a classmate of Viv's asking where she is, and he gets a little irate and acts a little like a child, a little bit like his age, being quite rude. And Vin responds by choking the boy.
Yes.
And then before anything harm is done, drops him and walks away. And the principal calls the parents in to talk to them and says, "Do you know what I would do to a child that brings a gun to my school? Your children are guns." And that's when Vision pulls that card. "I am Vision. I have saved the world 37 times, and every breath you take is because of me." And it's so impactful.
It's huge.
I mean, it's a hell of a card to pull, right? Because it's like, he's not wrong.
He's not, but he's also not right.
Yes.
You don't get to do that in this context.
Yeah.
This is bringing the gun to the knife fight. You are raising the stakes horribly here.
It will come up later, I think, in narration, and I think maybe narration by Virginia, that even though Vision has saved the world 37 times, it would only take one mistake and everyone would view him differently.
Yeah.
Everyone would give up on him. Everyone would say, "You are dangerous and must be stopped."
Yeah.
Which is something that we're looking at again and again, both in the 616 and in the MCU.
Yes.
This idea that exceptional people live by exceptional rules. The consequence of that is, if you step out of line, you end up with a civil war.
Yep.
Vision believes that Viv can be saved, and I like this dialogue here where he says, "Certainty is an illusion. Belief is a constant. I believe full repairs are possible."
I thought that was really interesting. What did you guys think about that line in particular?
I'm not sure about it, honestly. I'm not sure about belief and its role in Vision's existence, his perspective on the world, because I still have trouble with Vision. This is, I should say, coming into this, I'm not really a fan of Vision, you guys. Like, he's kind of won me over in the MCU. He's never really hooked me in the Avengers. I've never cared that much, and partly it's because I think it's really hard to write a character who is this powerful and this inhuman, but still connected to, still someone with whom we can narratively empathize. That is a human line. Like, Cap could have said that line.
Sure, absolutely.
It's about belief. We'll keep fighting. We'll do whatever is necessary. We can overcome the odds. But I'm not convinced that Vision has that internal kind of propulsive force.
I am, in the sense that throughout this, he will repeat these things where he'll say, well, that's not what human is. That's not what it is to be human. Here's what it is to be human. And he'll like say a phrase that's really complex. And it's like, yes, that expresses it. And here I think he is saying this because certainty is not something that humans have. Belief is. Certainty is something machines have. So I will not say that I am certain. I will say I believe because I am striving to be human.
That's really interesting.
So even in this moment,
Yes.
he's striving first to kind of reflect his personal experience through this prism of supposed humanity.
That's really interesting because I mean, like the reason why the line struck me is, you know, what he says is belief is a constant, and I immediately thought, no, it is not. It is definitely not a constant.
Definitely,
belief
like
can come and go, and
defined by
yeah.
not being a constant. in
Right,
fact.
exactly.
Yes.
And, you know, they even at one point, you know, whenever Viv and Vin are playing with the football and Vin says, you know, faith is believing in things that you can't see or whatever it is. And it's just, it's weird that they're talking in these terms that they can't possibly, they understand, but they don't comprehend, right?
Yeah.
And in the end of issue 2, we get Virginia getting the package in the mail, and it's this phone that has a video of her burying the Grim Reaper in the backyard, hiding this body that she's still not told her husband what had actually happened there, that she told him that he just left and had escaped. And it has her dropping the phone, and she gets a call from an unknown number on the phone as it falls, and that's the last thing we see. But the ending narration there, that for the first time since the Grim Reaper entered the house, Virginia felt joy. Yes, she still faced a number of unusual stresses, but somehow at that moment, each of these problems seemed to be small, tiny. All of them together seemed to easily fit in the palm of her hand. All she needed to do was make a fist, and they'd crumble to dust.
The narration in this series is so
great.
good.
Yeah.
It's just haunting is the word that we keep using because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. This whole comic I would describe as profound and eerie.
Yes, yes.
Then issue 3 gives us our first kind of turning point in the story. Issue 3 is split between, you know, domestic life, and then we get these flashbacks or flash outs, I suppose, to Agatha Harkness. This gorgeous art, this incredibly desaturated and vivid and jagged art.
We learn about the Everbloom.
Yes, and the brightest colors on every panel are the blood that's everywhere.
Just
and
these
it's just
slashes of red that just work beautifully.
Yeah.
What do you think of the resurrection of Viv? We have this great, I mean, almost a cameo by Tony Stark.
Yeah, just, hey, Tony, what's up?
Hey, Tony, everything good?
How you doing?
I really like that Tony tells Vision that he's not quite comfortable with what's happening here. And even more so than just reviving the daughter, he's like, this is going to take a lot of power. If something goes wrong, I'm going to tell the Avengers that you forced me to do this and
I'm going
turn
to
evil.
tell Jarvis that you went evil.
Yes.
To which Vision replies, of course.
Of course. And then as things almost go bad, like this is building up to one of those points, of course, to build the tension. This may not work. This may destroy the whole city. Something's going to happen here. And Tony's like, I'm going to stop it. I'm going to turn it off. And Vision says, Tony Stark, you are my colleague. You are a fellow Avenger. You are my oldest friend. But if you touch that button, I will kill you. She is my daughter, and I will save her. And then she's like, you just get this glimpse of everything that's going to happen in this comic right there in that one bit of dialogue.
Yes.
One of the most interesting sequences in this issue, I thought, was after Vision brings Viv home. He and Virginia are talking, and he's kind of going through his day. He's talking about this encounter with Tony and with everything that's happened. And he is, I guess, seduced by Virginia. She comes in wearing the lingerie. She strips the lingerie off.
It lets it phase through her.
The lingerie off.
Pretty great. And then it's heavily implied that they have sex. And I guess my question is, what is happening there? Is this just the replication of normal suburban life? Or is she, because she has a secret at this point.
Yeah.
And she's trying to distract him.
I think it is supposed to speak to that thing that can happen in relationships where somebody has a secret or something has happened and they don't want to talk about it, and the other person in the relationship is trying to bring it up, saying, hey, the Grim Reaper can't be found by S.H.I.E.L.D. This is an odd thing. And she's saying, oh, don't think about that right now. It's right. He can't be found. He's not here. He's gone now. It's all over. Let's focus on now.
He's not here,
Forget
but we
about
are.
the rest of that. Yeah.
And this seduction playing not to Vision's sexuality, but playing to his, humanity.
Yeah, I am your
His
wife,
desire
and this
for
is what
normalcy.
husbands and wives do.
So good and so disturbing, and when you read it again after you've come to the revelation that Virginia is, at least in significant part, Wanda Maximoff.
Yes.
I mean, that feels kind of true. That feels... Although, even at the same time, even as I'm saying that, I'm kind of wondering, okay, it's Wanda.
Yeah.
And Viv is their child. I mean, kind of their child. Is this manipulation, or is this some part of Wanda acting through Virginia to express gratitude, to express genuine love? Is she taking Vision to her bed to show him gratitude?
At one point in the letters page, someone asked Tom King why Vision would create a family, and he the person writing in listed like 5 or 6 different reasons why this would happen. And Tom King's response was, when it comes to romance, when it comes to family, when it comes to love and wanting to be human and all of these things, I don't think there is ever any one reason. It is a combination of every reason you have just listed. It is not, is it this or this or this? It's this, and it's this, and it's this, and it's this.
And not or.
Yes.
Yeah.
17 other things besides. Yeah.
Well, and also I wonder if, Virginia may just be grateful that Viv is home and that they were able to revive her and that she's doing okay. And I think that she's grateful. I think that she is trying to distract Vision from this line of thinking that he's going down. But we also find out later in the series that Virginia is going through and like altering his like central like his memories and things. Like she's, he gave her as his spouse permission to be able to like fiddle with like his interior circuitry.
Which we foreshadow a couple of times.
I'm not sure that she actually did.
Oh, do you think all that was a lie?
Story because
That's
what it says is this is what she told the detective. This is the story she told. And then when Vision talks to her, he says, I will fix the inaccuracies in the story that you told.
No,
and
you're
she's
exactly
like,
right.
don't you dare.
Yeah. Okay. No, you're totally
so
right.
I think there's room for some of it to be true. And maybe she did quite alter a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think that sex alters everybody's interior circuitry. So
if it's good enough, yeah.
I really like the end of issue 3 where we see Agatha Harkness. Her reason for consuming the Everbloom petal is because she had previously had a vision of Vision and a vision.
Yeah.
And it being
it's Visions all the way down.
Him covered in blood, the blood of his fellow Avengers. And she wanted to know what is happening in this vision. I need to know more. And so she consumed this to see a vision of the future. And what she says when she sees it at the very end of this issue is in late September, the vision's moved into, and she repeats the opening dialogue to the comic. What she is seeing is what's happening. And it is foreshadowing, that picture of Vision covered in blood and the Avengers surrounding him, dead or whatever. That's this story.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is how dark this is going to get. And we move into issue 4, and issue 4 has one of the most beautiful openings, and it's you mentioned it before, Vin and Viv playing football, and the brother is tricking the sister, phasing through the football at the last moment.
It's very Charlie Brown and Lucy,
yes,
right?
Very much so.
Flipped. I mean, it works really nicely. Yeah.
Which Tom King mentioned in the letter pages that Charles Schultz inspired him, and that's actually why he picked the name Sparky for the dog. He had a contest and listed all the people's entries, and he said he picked Sparky, and one of the reasons why is because Charles Schultz inspires him so much, and that was Charles Schultz's nickname is Sparky.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But they're playing football, and I can almost hear the birds. I can feel the warmth of the sun in these panels. The art here really speaks true with the mom looking out the window to the family, and you're getting the dialogue of Vision with his children and them talking about what normal is. And
what human is.
Yeah, what human is. And she's doing the dishes, staring out there. Which
is weird because they don't eat. Why are you washing those dishes, Virginia?
Those dishes were clean. She washes the dishes because human beings wash dishes.
Okay, no, you're exactly right. Man, what a creepy.
Yep.
Okay.
and you get that beautiful line of when the logo of the Native American is still on the football, and they talk about how the mascots change, but they haven't changed everything yet. And Vision says, this is typical of most human endeavors. They change, but they do not change.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is another issue where we reset back to the notion that this could just be a lighthearted story about robots who live in suburbia.
Yeah.
That this could just be a happy little story because we spent a lot of time with Viv. We spent a lot of time at school. We introduce the boy, CK.
Yes.
Her former lab partner. This is the guy who was choked out by Vin. And we're kind of doing this lovely little getting to know you process. It all feels great until you get to the turning point. We also, in this issue, have the conversation on the phone when Vision is also fighting Giganto.
Yes.
Which is great because then you get to draw a superhero fight scene that still serves the story. We don't have to take a break so that we can fight Giganto. We can just fight Giganto and also talk about raising our children.
Yes.
That's pretty good. And then...
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the end of the first act. This is our first major turning point. It is harrowing. This is This is Virginia confronting the person who sent the phone, the person who knows what it is that she did to the Grim Reaper.
And the narration gives us a hint that this is going to happen in that scene that I was just talking about with Virginia washing the dishes. The narration says, for a moment, as she listened to her family argue and laugh, Virginia felt content. She belonged here. They belonged here. Everything in the end would be good. That moment lasted 1.72 seconds, just like it would in this issue. That moment of feeling, oh, everything's going to be fine. This is going to be great. It's not going to last long. To set up what you're about to show, there's a part where, like you mentioned, that this boy who Vin choked out has a walk with Viv and basically says, hey, we have no problem here. I view
I mean,
you
like,
as
you're
fine.
cool or whatever. And like, I got to be your partner and like, that was cool.
This is the quote because I just love it. People say things, but like, no one understands things. I got to work with you, right? And it was cool, I think, right? I just mean, whatever they say, I think you're cool. And she says,
16-year-olds are cute.
And then we get this beautiful kind of foreshadowing of the very end. He says, as it's raining and they're walking home, he says, I should have brought an umbrella. Doesn't it kind of bother you like a machine and water and all that? To which Viv replies, no, it does not bother me. It just goes through me.
It just goes through me. Oh, that line.
I really like that too. Like looking at those, whenever they walk out into the rain and you can see that, we're now coloring him in darker because he's getting wet and his clothes are getting wet. And you see that Viv absolutely is not. Like her color palette doesn't change at all because the water just phases right through her.
Yeah.
And it says that in quiet times in the future, she will look back on this moment and replay it. And oh man, it's so great. And it's great to see here is an innocent child. Here is a child who accepts them. He's not afraid of them, even after having been choked.
Yeah.
And even after having said a rude child thing to her brother, he doesn't look at them like toasters like everyone else does. He sees them as people and wants to interact with them, wants to accept them.
His interactions...
He's like definitely got a crush on Viv.
Oh, definitely.
Right? Yeah,
but his
totes.
interactions with both Viv and Vin would have been exactly the same if they had been human.
Exactly, yeah.
So that works beautifully and brings us to this tragic counterpoint because Guy's not going to make it through the issue.
Nope.
He doesn't have much of a future left.
No,
it's
he does
fine.
not.
Yeah, the person blackmailing Virginia turns out to be his father. And the reason
CK's
why
dad.
he says that he came to greet them and saw her burying the Reaper in the backyard and took a video, but he wasn't going to do anything with it, which I mean, he was already starting out saying that they're things and he's saying these mean things about it. And why would you take the video if you're not going to do anything with it? But he says he wasn't.
Well, I mean, he even says that's what people do, right? They take
He
videos.
just feels he's confused by the situation. He is showing that he doesn't know how to deal with what is happening around him, and this is his way of reacting. And he says, until your boy choked my boy, and I knew something had to be done. And all I'm asking for, I'm not asking for money, I'm just asking for you to leave.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. He says, that's it. That's all. No money, nothing, just leave. I'm just trying to be straight, trying to be real with you, To which Virginia replies, yes, I know. But please understand, I too am trying to be real.
Yeah.
Oh, God. This is one of the most interesting fracture points, I think, between Vision and Virginia, which is that this is a conscious choice for him. This is a mission for him. This is something that he has undertaken. This is something that she has been created for. She doesn't have a choice. She doesn't get to stop wanting to be human or to stop wanting to protect her children. There's a sense in which Vision could at some point make the pragmatic choice that he could end this endeavor and be called back to fight Thanos and everything would be fine.
Sure.
But Virginia doesn't have an existence outside of this family, outside of the identity that he gave her.
Yeah.
And when I say that she's a tragic figure, it is in large part because she was created to fulfill a function that she can never fulfill. A function that is impossible. You're given this guiding principle in your life. And it is only ever going to bring death and destruction, as it does at the end of this issue, where CK's father fires his weapon at her, and she phases so that it passes right through her.
And the boy had woken up and heard this discussion, came out to see what was going on, asked his father, what's happening? As both bullets enter him, one through his head and one into his chest.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Virginia kills the father.
Yeah. And the father yells, you killed my boy.
Yeah.
And in a moment of panic, she makes her fist as hard as diamond and puts him into a coma that he may never wake up from.
Yeah.
Pretty powerful.
And the narration at that point, I love, says that at that very moment, Viv was thinking about the moment in the rain.
Yeah.
And she quotes the boy, people say things, but like no one understands things.
Yeah.
Doesn't it kind of bother you like a machine in water and all that? No, it does not bother me. It just goes through me.
And I like that also the blood from... I don't know if it's from her hitting him on the head or
no, I think
from
it's
the
CK's
gunshot,
blood.
is on the image of the Native American mascot, calling back to the beginning of Vision saying, like most human endeavors.
Sorry, this is. I'm looking at the page right now, and because I think it's like really symbolically important, it's not. It is from her killing him.
Oh, it is?
It is as she punches him, and you get this horrible crack sound
Oh,
effect.
I see. Got it.
And the blood spatters directly onto the somewhat, insensitive
The
depiction
racist,
of the Native American.
yeah.
Yes.
So they change, but they do not change. Here you see a human changing, but not changing, and you see again the violence coming out that she took care of the Grim Reaper and now is having to do something horrible again. There is change, but there's not change.
Yes.
It's this continual cycle spiraling.
The use of Native American iconography, of course, also calls to mind the forceful intrusion of a new order, of a new peoples.
Yes.
Yeah.
So then we get into issue 5 and we hit the first thing in this book that doesn't work for me perfectly. What do you guys make of the Shylock monologue right here at the beginning of issue 5?
I think I understand what we're trying to do, but I've never read The Merchant of Venice. I've never seen The Merchant of Venice. I couldn't tell you what The Merchant of Venice was about, except perhaps a guy who sells things in Italy. Maybe. I don't actually know. But I think that I don't know. Is it heavy-handed? Is it not? I'm not sure.
It feels heavy-handed.
Okay,
to me.
great.
It feels like a go-to reference. It feels like a standard expected reference, and we haven't had any of those in this book so far. I don't hate it, and like you, I see what he's trying to do. I see what Tom King is trying to do, and the monologue basically revolves around this notion of revenge. That we are all people, that we are all human beings, and we are all, whether we are Christian or Jew, we are all motivated by exactly the same foundational principles, including the desire for vengeance.
Yes.
I don't need it, honestly. I don't like it that much. It segues into the English lit class that Vin is taking, which is going to lead us later to his kind of preoccupation with Shakespeare.
Yes.
Which is fascinating, and we get a really good joke about that later, which we can kind of spend some time on. But here and now, it doesn't really work. We get this, the sequence, I guess, ends with the teacher saying... but you are asking, Mr. Santora, it is old, it is distant, it is OMG complicated. What does it have to do with me and my smartphone and my texting and my emojis? Well, let me answer that for you, my precious, darling students. Let me answer it by saying, you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah.
Which, okay.
I don't hate it. About Shakespeare?
It's fine, but it doesn't quite do it.
Yeah.
And then we move from that to the appearance of the detective at the Vision's home, and we get this... this fantastic sequence of Vision basically maintaining the facade, that he is a normal suburban man with a normal suburban family officer and everything is fine. Meanwhile...
He phases out the door to talk to the detective, right? Okay,
pretty great.
And the family is at the table having their dinner discussion when he decides to leave.
Yes.
And I also like that just for a brief panel, you get an image of a tactical squad across the street ready because they don't trust Vision to come quietly and discuss this thing that has happened. But when he does decide to leave, I really like the moment where Virginia smashes the table and says, everything is normal.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, right before she smashes the table, and I think this leads to her smashing the table, we get the first break from Virginia.
When her speech patterns start messing up.
Yes. You will tell me about your day's activities. We will continue our discussion. Then there's a beat, and the children look at her confused, appalled, frightened.
Yeah.
And she smashes the table and says, everything is normal. Yeah.
And that's and Viv's response to that. What is wrong with us?
Yes.
A typical teenage girl. And then she reads the child who has died's yearbook quote that says, it's all about the love, and then runs out of the room facing out.
And Vin picks that up with, Mother, if you prick me, do I bleed?
Yeah, it's real. Like it's starting to get bad, y'all. It's starting to get
things are about to go very badly indeed.
Yes.
Then we move into one of my favorite sequences in the entire book, which is the interview with the detective.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I just want a quick comment. It's very interesting to me that Virginia is having a hard time dealing with these things, and the children are dealing with them because of the way they were made. They are taking in their surroundings. They are dealing with them through the things around them.
Yes.
Vin is dealing with it through The Merchant of Venice, and Viv is dealing with it through the things this boy had said.
Yeah, and also, I guess, those narratives. I mean, suburbia is this particular version of suburbia is defined by the narrative of the conventional American family. And these children are absorbing those stories. They're absorbing what high school is supposed to be like,
right.
what experience is supposed to be like, what being human is supposed to be like. And they're trying to process those, trying to filter their experiences through those, which I guess is the opposite of what Vision is doing. He's taking this inhuman experience and forcing it into a human-shaped container.
Yeah.
The children are doing what we all do, which is taking a human experience and trying to
Fit it into whatever container
interpret
someone
it.
presents to us.
Yeah. That's, God, it's so good. It's so good.
Then we get that wonderful interview.
Oh, I love this. This is the interview throughout which Vision actually recounts the 37 times.
Yes, it's very, very good.
Yeah, and
If
it
you've
says
been
there
reading
could be more than
comics-
37
Oh, sure, no,
times
but
because
these are
of
the
other
ones
things he's done. But
he
these are
thinks
the
of.
37 he thinks of.
I love that like 4 times it says Ultron again.
I'm going to read the whole thing here.
Yes.
In no particular order. 1, the Sentinels strike. 2, the Proctor War. 3, Ultron. 4, Immortus. 5, Thanos and his hordes. 6, Atlantis attacks. 7, Loki. 8, Emperor Doom. 9, Mephisto. 10, the Space Phantom. 11, the Witch on Wundagore Mountain. 12, the Serpent's Crown. 13, the Crossing. 14, Ultron. Again. 15, Operation Galactic Storm. 16, Jocasta, Bride of Ultron. 17, the Morgan Conquest. 18, Necrodamus. 19, the Korvac Saga. 20, the Phoenix Force. 21, Baron Zemo. 22, the Kree Skrull War. 23, Ultron. Again. 24, Kang. 25, the Red Skull. 26, Ultron. Again. 27, Ultron. Again. 28, Claw. 29, Onslaught. 30, Magneto. 31, Kang Dynasty. 32, Demetrios. 33, Ultron. Again. 34, the Black Talon. 35, Galactus. 36, Ultron. Again. 37, Master Pandemonium. 37 times. He saved us all. But it's not enough, is it? In the end, I mean.
Yeah, and the narration, I love the way it continues there when it says 37 times when he had been beaten, torn, and tortured, and in his emotionless voice said, I am Vision of the Avengers. I will not fall.
Yeah.
37 times, and all of it cannot redeem him from this one small moment when he crossed to the other side, when he entered into the madness that was soon to come, the small moment, the small lie, and he tells the detective, last Tuesday, yes, my family, they were all with me.
Pretty great.
It's really good.
It's pretty great. This is an extraordinarily powerful moment because I think the story could have unfolded in a really interesting way if Vision had been an innocent.
Yeah.
But we don't make him an innocent. We make
No,
him
absolutely
completely
not.
culpable. We force him to choose between this facsimile of a normal life and honestly his first duty as an Avenger.
Yeah.
His first duty to his own nature. You know?
Yes.
Vision is famous for being honest, for talking without, any kind of equivocation. It's an outright lie.
Right. And we'll address that here in the next issue of why he would do this. But the last page of this issue, I really enjoy when Vision returns home to Virginia and she's sitting at the broken table and she's repeating, I do not know how to fix it. I do not know how to fix.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to everything that's happened.
Yeah.
She's trying to hold this together and she keeps ruining it.
Yeah.
It keeps falling apart in her hands.
Yeah.
And issue 6 starts out with George and now Martha.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe it's like Martha Nora.
And they're having a discussion. The dog runs next door and digs up the Grim Reaper as the narration talks about P versus NP, a problem solvable by a computer through algorithms and shortcuts, as opposed to a problem that a computer will have to figure out by going through every possibility that would take a billion computers a billion years to solve. And what happens when the Vision encounters a problem that cannot be solved? The NP. And this issue is going to tell us that he has to decide to continue to fight for normalcy, to continue in the face of not having an answer.
Yeah. When you don't know what to do, you do what you know.
Yes. And that's why he would have lied at the end. I really like that.
So then he makes a dog, which was neat.
He sure does make a dog.
He
That is
sure
the thing
does
that he
make Sparky the Vision dog.
Before that, through the reasoning for that is that the dog is electrocuted by the Grim Reaper's scythe.
I guess.
And dies.
It's
And
confusing.
Vision uses his brainwaves to create a dog for the family. But before that happens, George comes over to look for the
Yes.
dog, and the house is just destroyed.
A
And you're
mess.
left to wonder kind of what happened there. Was there a fight? Is Virginia just breaking and cleaning? This is her version of clean house. Like she mentions that she apologizes, they're remodeling. She read an article online that said to get clean, she specifically says, you are required to introduce a substantive turmoil. And then she says, I want to get clean. And when she says that in the panel, she's in the distance, but in the foreground is Viv with her head between her knees, crying, still mourning the death of her friend.
This is one of those panels, too, where we get the glimpse of the vase.
Yeah.
That in the midst of this destruction, this thing is just hovering in the air, completely untouched, completely perfect. It is as it is. Toxic, unreal, representative of something that it ought to be but can never be.
Yes.
And we also get the call to the lighter because George picks it up and goes, isn't this that lighter that Captain America gave you that is from 1943? It still works. And he makes the comment, they don't make things like they used to.
Where in the foreground of the shot, Vin is oiling the back of his neck.
Yes.
Yep.
Sure don't make things like they used to, do they? No, you are right, George. They do not. So what is your reading of the destruction of the house? Was this Virginia? Did she go on some kind of rampage? Did she have some kind of dissociative break? Was this Vision? Was there a fight? What are we supposed to make of that?
I think that Virginia is just trying to do her best. And she is like, I think that she's falling apart. Like, I think that she's like just completely deteriorating and has, I don't know. I'm not sure why Vision allowed for this to happen. I'm not sure why he hasn't stopped it yet, or if he isn't, obviously when you walk in and you see the houses like that, he's going to see it. So maybe this is something that just happened today while he was at work with the president. Yeah. I don't know. Like it's interesting that we don't really explain what happened there and that we are left to just kind of wonder. The kids are just kind of wandering around. They're not in school. Vin has been suspended and Viv is still having to deal with the death of CK and just, everything around them is falling apart, but they're acting as though everything is completely normal.
Yes, which is in part what suburban life is all about, you guys. Lives of quiet desperation.
Family!
So we create the new dog, Sparky, the little
and I
green...
like that while Vision is creating the dog, you are getting the narrated version of the conversation that he had with his wife, but it's just his side of it, his response to her telling him everything that had happened. Yeah. And he says that he wishes she would have come sooner because he now regrets what he had done and his lying. And he knows that if he would go forth now and tell the truth, that he would not be trusted and that the Avengers would wonder about what he's trying to accomplish here and what the his reasoning is, and people will see them as just wires and electrodes and be afraid of them. And he says, we are not trying to accomplish anything. We just are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked the juxtaposition of the language there. I thought it was really good. Did you guys, while you're going through these panels, we see Vision in a butcher's apron with a bone saw and there's blood all over him?
Very Dexter feeling.
Did you guys think that he was cutting up the Grim Reaper?
Yes, the first time I read it, I did.
I definitely did as well.
Yeah,
no, I totally did.
I think you're led to think
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, oh, God, what is he doing?
What? Oh, no.
Hey.
Oh, no.
Turns out every act of destruction is an act of creation.
Yeah. And that's how you make a dog. If you want to create a dog, first you have to create the universe.
I do like that in the end, when he does give the dog to the family, that what he wanted it to do is accomplished. Yeah. That Viv snaps out of her depression and looks at this dog and is happy and smiles once again. I really like that moment. And I like the narration at this point that says all his efforts likely would never produce an answer that he knows is there. This is NP, and that NP will never equal P. And how do we deal with that unsolvable problem? Like we already talked about, the answer for Vision was that he would fix what was broken and hide what could not be fixed. He could not choose between family and practicality. For him, it was no choice at all.
Yeah.
And that's when we get the revelation that the narrator up to this point, or at least in this issue, or maybe a little bit more.
I'm comfortable reading her as the narrator, I think, through the first 6 issues. Yeah, I think so.
Agatha Harkness is that narrator, and she is in the spectral ghost form, and she is talking to the Avengers and warning them of the destruction that could come. She says, he will kill you, he will kill your families, he will raise the world.
And we see the assembled Avengers.
Yes.
Though standing next to Agatha is Wanda.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So then we go into issue 7, which starts off with the flashback, like all the various...
We get just flashbacks.
Yeah, just tons of flashbacks.
We get a guest artist on this one. I don't know if we've mentioned who did what in this comic, but just real quickly, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, amazing penciler and inker did all the pencils and inks.
I really like his style. I like that it looks a little sketchy, that it looks not
it's
completely cleaned up. I
beautiful.
love that.
But for this issue, we get Michael Walsh, who takes over just for this issue through the flashbacks and does an amazing job, and really comparatively close in a lot of ways. The styles do seem to fit each other. Throughout the whole series, we have colors by Jordi Belair, who is one of my favorite comics colorists. She does amazing things with color. Leathers by Clayton Cowles, which if you could have a favorite leather...
I think
Clayton's
you can.
mine. Yeah.
Sure.
I love Clayton's
good.
stuff, and I already mentioned covers by Mike Del Mundo. But yes, this has the guest artist, and I think it really fits to have a different artist step in for the flashbacks.
I think so too. Absolutely. We've also got like a slightly different color palette now. As we're going through, it's almost there's a little bit of a sepia tone going on, but so we get like tons of flashbacks about memories between Wanda and Vision about when they first met, whenever they're macking on each other behind a tree while the Avengers are fighting in the background.
I love that so much. Fighting of all people, Count Nefaria.
Yeah, it's really good.
Like real lame C-tier villain to fight against. But we should probably...
Which is why Wanda and Vision are making out.
Right,
like they're not needed for this battle.
Yeah. This is the issue that starts out with the toaster joke, as we've already mentioned before.
Yes.
And it goes
ends with the toaster joke too, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It bookends the issue.
And in the middle here, you have Vision confronting Wanda about their children not being real, and she blows up and she calls him a toaster. She said, "What will you know? You're not real."
Yeah, it's really hard to go through and see. And then we see like very, very young Tommy and Billy, all of this we see. Okay, so I'm not sure if this happened in some other comic that I wasn't aware of, but whenever White Vision shows up and is
that's
talking
when he
to
was
Wanda.
wiped. And made new.
And he wipes
most
her
comics kind of
memories
just push him to the side.
Yeah, because that was undone. As you'll see as the flashbacks continue. He almost immediately restored his original personality, his original memories and programming.
Okay, great. So then we see her with Wonder Man, we end with Vision and Virginia in bed together on the toaster joke again.
I also like the repetitive joke where he says at the beginning when he says that he loves her, he's like, "Did you hear me? Should I adjust the volume of my voice? It's my comfortable volume, but I can change it." And then she flips that on him later when she's presenting the crystal, and she's like, "Did you hear me? I could adjust the volume of my voice," and they have that laugh.
It's a 3-beat because the second time we get it, he actually does adjust the volume of his voice. This is when he's yelling at her about their children.
Yeah.
It's that's extraordinary.
It's really,
How
really,
dare
really
you,
good.
Tom King? How dare you?
Yeah.
It does bring up that laughter again. They're dealing with a tense situation and there's laughter, but then it ends with the toaster joke being repeated and there's not that laughter.
Yeah.
There's a tense moment, but there's not that laughter. And we get that narration at the very end that says, "In the end, we begin again and everything is new and different."
Yes. So then we go to issue 8 where we've got just the family kind of like everything's like the house is put together again, or they're in are they in a different house
they're in
yet?
the same house.
Okay, so that happens later, and then suddenly we are introduced to Victor Mancha. Mancha?
I'd go for Mancha.
Mancha?
I'd go with the long way there.
What do you guys think about Victor?
Yeah, he was introduced in The Runaways, created by Brian K. Vaughan. And
a future topic for Excelsior. Let's just say right
The
now.
Runaways is
we'll get there.
fantastic,
We're definitely going to talk
amazing.
about that.
Also created by Vision for similar purposes. Also created by Ultron for similar purposes as Vision, therefore making Ultron his father and Vision his brother. So a very interesting connecting point there. I like him in this comic. I think he was a really good introduction. Tom King admitted in the leather pages this wasn't his idea, that he was originally going to bring in a different character to play this role, but then someone brought Victor to him and said, "Hey, I think this would play." And Tom King said, "This is more perfect than I could have ever asked for."
Oh, that's wonderful.
To actually bring in Vision's real family here into this constructed family.
His quote-unquote real family.
He's going to bring in the original Human Torch to play this role.
Oh, wow.
Which would have also been an interesting take, but not as connected to, connected to Vision, but not as connected to like a family aspect of being a brother.
Sure.
So we have a lot of time passing in this issue. Victor is staying with the Visions for a little while, and months are passing. He's staying basically through the whole winter and having conversations with each of the family members.
When he first arrives,
call out the Shakespeare joke.
Oh,
we can talk about when he first arrives. Shakespeare's masturbation is an incredibly funny joke. That sequence is beautifully written.
It's very good.
It's perfectly okay to Shakespeare. Everyone Shakespeare's from time to time. You just want to do other things besides
whenever
Shakespeare.
you go upstairs,
we
can hear what you're doing.
It's okay. Everybody does it. But too much Shakespeare can be, too much Shakespeare.
So here's my question, because I love that sequence. I don't understand, I think, the sequence with Viv. She goes
in the graveyard.
Yeah. She goes to CK's grave. And then there's an odd beat. Do you have that panel in front of you, Sam?
Yeah, I do. So we see CK's grave. We see Viv like phase up through the ground. So she was just like subterranean for a little bit, just like traveling. I'm not sure.
Is that supposed to be like what I think it is?
I mean, was she in the coffin with him?
This is is that the only possible explanation? Because her first dialogue bubble after that says,
I should not have seen that. Oh my gosh. Okay, so yeah, no, she totally was in the
She
coffin
went
with
down
him.
to look
She
at his
saw
body.
his corpse. Oh. Okay.
I think it
And
plays
then-
interestingly well because she is not a human and she does not know about death in that,
Right.
aspect.
Yeah,
She's
yeah.
pondering these things and she goes to look, and as a machine, she would not decay the same way a human
Yeah,
would.
yeah.
And she goes
Absolutely
and looks
not.
and she gets a revelation of how fragile humans actually
Yes. So Viv says, I should not have seen that. And we see Victor next to her and he says, I told you. Shit. But I mean, it's got the little symbols there for comic book swearings. But okay, so that makes way more sense now. I did not catch that when I read through. I was just like, what?
Thought that might
What?
be it, but kind of didn't want it to be true. But
Well,
yes.
apparently so. So after that, we see that Victor and Vision are at an art gallery looking up at Donald and Mickey up on the wall. And Vision ends with, they're just talking about the family and how everything's going. And Vision says, do you ever wonder, Victor, what does any of this mean?
Yeah, it's
And
really
I don't think he's
interesting
talking about
pondering
art.
point there.
No.
I love all of these different views that we get on the family and Victor seeing them from the outside. And especially at the beginning, we talked about them eating. They go to the restaurant and they say, just don't bring out any food. We'll pay for it. Bring out a bill in 45 minutes.
We ordered food.
Yes.
Do not bring us the
Don't
food.
bring us
Yeah, don't
food.
make
45
food.
minutes and then bring us the bill for the appropriate amount.
I really like when Victor is talking to Vin and he says, you can't just read all the time. Don't you want to be a hero like your father, like the Vision?
Mm-hmm.
But he admits that he himself was obsessed with Cervantes, and that's how he connected to being human. And it's interesting to see these synthezoids trying to grasp for humanity, going straight for literature and finding a piece of literature they can grasp onto, and how literature really does express our humanity. It's the thing that we have that most expresses humanity in the arts. And that's, of course, we get the museum scene as well. And then we get that scene where Vin has stepped outside of the home. He's not reading Shakespeare. He's playing ball with the dog. And the narration tells us to follow the bouncing ball. As it bounces off the house and the dog phases into the house, and Vin approaches after the dog, and the narration begins to beg Vin, follow the bouncing ball, Vin.
Please,
follow
Vin,
the ball,
please.
please.
Yeah.
I love the narration break there of this humanity in the narration going, please do not, I know what's happening in the story. I know what's going to happen next. Please bounce off the wall and turn around.
But he doesn't, and he goes in, and we see that Victor has been communicating with the Avengers and has essentially been acting as a spy on the family for the last month that he's been there.
The first thing he hears is, I've earned their trust.
Yes.
Which is not what you want to hear from someone who has grown close to you as a family member.
Yeah, so then Victor sees that Vin is there, and he's like, you're not supposed to be in here. Wait, let me explain. I can explain everything. And then suddenly Victor's weird magnetic powers have Vin in his grasp, and we end on Vin screaming.
Yeah, and Victor is saying, I just need you to listen, holding him in place with his electromagnetic powers. And you get a little bit of the backstory of Victor talking about how he won't be what he was fated to be, to destroy the Avengers.
I will not be
and
victorious.
Become this villain known as Victorious. Oh, it's such an impactful ending.
So issue 9, the first 2 pages of this issue are, first of all, this is just unnecessarily good. Like, just the way that it's composed. It doesn't need to be like this, but it is, and it's great. So we've got, like the most domestic we've seen the family in quite some time. We've got Virginia coming in trying to get hold of Viv, who is like, Mother, I'm coded to be 16. You can't just phase into my room. And, she goes and she talks with Vision. And then suddenly we just see like this crackling energy as Vin is just screaming for his mother and his father. And we cut back, we see the family talking more, and then we cut again to Vin, like, trapped in this power that Victor has him in.
And Virginia is getting worried. She's looking for him, and she's like, my son is missing, his uncle is missing, the dog is missing.
Where
the damn
is dog?
everybody?
Yeah.
And Vision is like, he's just a child. They probably just want safety. Things like this happen as they grow. They'll be doing all sorts of new things.
Right, exactly, yeah. They probably, cut us off from their core circuitry for privacy or whatever it is.
And it's during his being in the grasp, it might come just slightly later when he's let go and then re-grasped by the electromagnetic powers, that Vin's laser beam from his head shoots out through the house and into George and Martha's house, setting it on fire.
Yeah, it hasn't happened quite yet, but it's going to happen like here in just a few minutes. We get a little bit of backstory about Victor and how he's addicted to vibranium.
The vibranium, yep. Which also brings up, I don't know if it comes up later in the comic, but that's why he was so interested in the piano. The piano is made from vibranium.
As a gift from Black Panther to the Visions, because it's made out of vibranium. Yeah.
Sure.
So then we see again Victor and Vin in the middle of this fight. We get a lot more background on Victor as he was part of the Runaways, and we're learning more about like this vibranium thing and how he didn't want to become victorious.
I totally forgot. We skipped over that Victor did have a moment with Virginia playing the piano. When she was playing the piano, and she was like, I can get every note perfect, but when I play it, something feels wrong. Yeah. I'm perfect. I become the piano.
Yeah, I'm not playing the piano.
And then she starts stuttering her speech again, and he holds her and says, it's okay. Everything's because it's such an intense moment.
It's really, really good.
Anyways,
all four of the scenes that we get with Victor and
they're so
the
beautiful.
visions
Are very good. Yes.
Great.
Back to Victor.
Yes, so we get so we finally get to where Vin breaks out from that electromagnesis really quick. Sparky attacks Victor. Good boy, Sparky. And cut back again to more of, there's just a lot of Victor backstory, which, like, at this point, I don't care about Victor that much, like, especially now that I know that he's a spy, and I'm just like, no, wait, can we deal with the family that I've been spending several issues with?
And it's an odd choice, because we spend a lot of time with Wanda.
Yes.
That's fine, because Wanda's completely
that makes sense.
necessary and
Yes,
pivotal. We spend almost no time with Agatha Harkness at all, and she's vital to the way that the story unfolds.
Right.
This backstory for Victor... I think it's pretty good, but I also think it's inessential. It feels like we're slowing the pace.
I think. Yeah, we revisit, his time with the Runaways about too many times. We only needed that one shot, and we keep coming back to it.
Great, though. If you're a fan of the Runaways, as I am, it is great to see Chase show up on the page.
Yeah, I have no idea what that means. Right? I'm super looking forward to the Runaways. That's going to be a great
Runaways
episode.
is going to be your book. You're
okay, I'm really stoked, but right now I'm just like, WTF though? Like, what is going on?
No, that's fair.
So then that's when, right after this, we get Vin's power shoots from his laser and blasts into George, Nora, Martha's house. Yeah,
fulfilling the prophecy from issue 1.
Yes, exactly. And that is when Vision suddenly is attentive to where his son might be and what is going on.
They hear the blast, and Vision comes phasing through the door and is like, what is going on? Only to see his child's motionless body laying on the ground, and Victor trying to apologize, saying that he didn't have control of his powers. Yes. He didn't know. He was he just didn't know, and he's freaking out, and it's so intense.
Yeah,
and that's when Virginia then phases through into the room.
Yes, and it seems that Vin we're not going to be able to revive him. He is completely and totally broken. The last lines in this issue, we've got our narrator talking again, and who has spent several pages talking about what has been going on with Victor and what's been going on with Vision and with the Vision family and all of that. And the narrator says they would finally understand what caused Vision's fall into madness. They would finally know what could possibly make him want to harm his friends. And it's the murder of his son by his own brother.
Yeah.
So then issue 10.
Appropriately Shakespearean.
Yeah, fair enough. Absolutely. If you're going to do the thing, commit to the bit. Right. Yeah.
And I like the human brokenness of Victor doing exactly what Virginia was doing. He's in the corner repeating, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you see that there is a bit of humanity in the breaking of Virginia. And
this is what happens when you tell robots to be people.
Yeah.
They do it bad.
When will we learn?
And people get hurt.
Yeah.
Also, robots get hurt.
And no one
gets hurt.
Why would you build a robot with feelings, Ultron? You did a bad job.
And the opening dialogue
of issue 10 is amazing.
Is so beautiful. I'm just going to read this quick bit of it. Wife, our recent home incarceration has provided me with time to think. I should mention that they are being kept locked
under house arrest.
Under house arrest from the Avengers as the Avengers try to figure out what happened and sort through everything. And he says, has provided me time to think, and I have spent this time thinking about my brother, Victor Mancha, how Victor is alive, and my son, Vin, is not. I have run through a number of scenarios, a great number, and I have rigorously applied those scenarios to a variety of philosophical and religious traditions. Despite my efforts, unfortunately, I cannot see how, in any scenario, in any philosophical or religious tradition, this current outcome is just. I must therefore conclude it is not just, and what is not just must be addressed. This is true in all scenarios, in all systems. Now, I cannot revive our son, therefore it seems obvious that I cannot. I am Vision of the Avengers. I saved the world 37 times. I love that breaking of him. That emotion, that realization, even as a reader, that Vision is not only human, he is something more than human. His emotions run just as deep as anyone's that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
No, it's incredibly powerful. This sense of injustice is palpable and true. Does Victor's action make sense for you guys? I mean, this is what drives the last act of the story. This is what drives us into our final climax, our final showdown, our final catastrophe.
Reading through the dialogue presented from Victor, when he's saying, stop, just don't tell your father. I can explain everything. Just stop. He's panicking in that moment and he doesn't have control of his powers. And reading the parts of Vibranium does show this person of addiction and reacting that way. And it does, to me, speak true to life from other stories I've read of people of addiction. And when they come into a time of turbulence where they're not in control of the situation and how they will overreact very often. And so it does make sense to me in a lot of those ways. And that his power is, he can't control it like he thought. So he thought he was just holding him there and then and he didn't think through what that would cause. To the boy.
And you saying that even like just now makes me understand a little more about why we have so much Victor stuff. And so that we can understand that very specific moment so that we can understand.
Though I think we could have accomplished that with a narration bubble, honestly. I don't think we necessarily needed the splash pages that we got.
It was a lot.
As beautiful as they were.
Yeah. So then we see the Visions are sitting at the table. We hear that Viv is going to be able to keep doing her homework. They're just going to send it home to her. She can't go to school anymore. Virginia is even more broken than normal. Her ability to speak is even more like destroyed and all of this. And Vision, just reaches over and touches her hand and, it's right. You're right. It's good. All of this. We see Sparky tries to get out of the house and then a shield goes off. We find out that Tony has installed the shield to keep the Visions inside of their home. They are under house arrest.
And he calls them and Vision has to assure him.
Has to be like, no, it was just a dog. No, we're not trying to escape. Everything's fine.
The Avengers do not need to assemble.
Yes. Please, God, don't assemble.
And one of the most beautiful parts of this comic is when Vision goes to check on his daughter and she's kneeling in prayer. And she says, I haven't begun yet. And he says, in that case, can I join you?
Yeah.
And you get these synthezoids then praying to this God, and the way that she prays is so beautiful. In the leather pages,
so freaking good.
They refer to it as the robot's prayer.
Yes.
That I do not know if there is a God. It seems unlikely. I do not know if Vin had a soul. It also seems unlikely. And I like Vision's just affirming. He's like, that's yes, that's true. And so then she prays. First, I pray that there is a God.
Yes.
Then I pray that Vin had a soul.
Yes.
Then I pray for God to allow Vin's soul to rest.
Yeah. It's really, really great. It's just looking at it like from a faith perspective. It's like, no, this is exactly how prayer is supposed to be. Just very simple and like true. And it's
honest. And,
it's really, really good.
And it means
I like
so
it
much
a lot.
coming from Viv specific. If Vision had prayed at this point, I would have been suspicious that this was another piece of theater. That this was another. He's play acting the part of the wounded father. But because it comes from Viv and we've seen her be so emotionally connected, so emotionally open to the world around her, it speaks as completely authentic.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Then we cut to Virginia, who is wondering at the oil can and the lighter, and she's talking about the lighter, and she says that George made that comment. They don't make things like they used to, and she's commenting on Vin and his having oiled himself and his having died, but the lighter has survived so long. And Vision explains, well, the lighter is just made of vibranium. It's only stronger metal, and that explains it all. There's nothing more to it than that.
Which is effectively like being like, no, Vin didn't have a soul. He was just metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, disturbing, but yes.
Yes. So then we get several beautiful, really dark panels where Vision goes off by himself, plucks out his own robot eye. Gross. But I mean, I guess it's not gooey, so it's probably fine. I guess it's not gross. It just makes a click noise. It's the Nintendo Switch of eyeballs. And he plays a hologram of Vin begging for his dad's attention. Hey, look at me, look at me, look at this thing that I can do. And you hear Vision's voice saying, I'm on a call with the Avengers. I can't right now. And Vin does, another Shakespearean monologue. And then at the end is like, did you watch? Did you see it? Wasn't I good? Am I good? And Vision is like, I didn't see you. I told you I was on a call with, and he stops the projection. And it's just like, jeez.
Yeah. And then he sits solemnly in his dark room. And the next day, he approaches the force field and shoves the lighter through, destroying the lighter. And
he's in like his full Vision outfit now, his
looking
superhero
so
outfit.
intense, and forces himself through the force field. And the narration tells us that indeed there is a God to welcome us, as unlikely as it may seem, to our rest when we die. But robots do not have souls; they simply end, and it informs us that some prayers are not answered. And that's when Nova informs Iron Man that the alarm went off at the Vision's home and that Vision is heading for the prison with Victor in it. And Iron Man calls for the Avengers to assemble.
Yes. So issue 11 starts with we see Virginia and Viv sitting at the table, and Virginia decides that she's going to tell Viv what really happened to CK and explains what happens there. At the same time, we see Vision approaching the assembled Avengers who are like, hey!
Outside of a theater playing Omega the Unknown, a movie version of this comic that's one of the smaller comics in Marvel that has a pretty big history to it that one of my favorite artists got to pick up on. That's neither here nor there.
All right, well, I want to know about this at some other point. I know that we're running long on this episode, but you're going to have to tell me about that later. So, yeah, we see Vision confronting the Avengers, and my favorite part in all of this, so he's basically telling them, no, I need to come after Victor. Victor killed my son. And Vision says, I would greatly appreciate your cooperation in this matter. However, I do not require your cooperation in this matter.
He
and
repeats
you're just
that
like,
over and over again as
yeah,
he
yeah.
continues because Iron Man tries putting him in the force field. He's like, all right, you've made it clear you're not going to stop. I'm going to put you in the force field. And Vision just blasts him.
I don't require your cooperation.
My favorite panel is Spider-Man checking on Iron Man, and he just says, poop.
Yeah. It's very, very
and Vision
good.
begins to repeat in that intensity, and all of the Avengers are staring him down, and they begin to fight. Oh my gosh, it's so crazy.
And at the same time that all of this is going on, we see that Virginia is trying so hard to tell Viv what has gone on, and this ends with Viv also breaking the table like mother, like daughter.
Yeah.
And she screams, he said I was cool, and my mother killed him. Teenage crushes are hard, y'all.
Yeah. Here the metaphor kind of breaks down.
A little bit, yeah.
This is family drama.
So she breaks the table. Virginia tries to calm her down, and Viv just says, "It just goes through me. It just goes through me," and she phases
fades
away.
out, yeah.
And we awful arc words that echo through the whole book.
Yeah.
It just goes through me.
And then we see Vision kicking every Avenger's ass, just completely.
To show that he is the Superman of the Avengers. He is the one who has the power sets to take down the Avengers if he had to.
And
Yes.
the knowledge, I think, too.
Yeah.
His ability to completely understand the people that he's fighting.
Yeah.
Give him a powerful upper hand. I mean, there are superheroes out there who that is their whole deal.
Yeah.
You know, like Midnighter has no particular skill. That was an obscure pull. I went to Midnighter.
Who?
Wow. Okay, well, we'll talk about Midnighter and Apollo sometime. You will love those two, let me tell you.
I'm excited.
That is the Batman analog and the Superman analog from the Wildstorm universe, who are also super a couple and are adorable.
Excellent. Yes, now I'm into this thing.
Yes.
Well, to stick with Marvel, Taskmaster, his
Taskmaster,
whole thing is
that would have been a much more appropriate
way
pull.
someone
Thank you,
fights and
Vincent.
then uses it against them, and the only
Yes.
person that usually can beat him is Deadpool because he's so insane that he can't. Taskmaster can't get a read on him.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that makes sense. The other super cool thing about these panels is that we are actually getting the narrator is telling us the origin story of the Vision and about
He was created for this.
that and how he was created for this to like fight these people, and it's very. The way that the narrator speaks here is almost as though they are reading creation myth. Like it's just very
I found that too,
archaic
yes.
and very.
Well, and we've had that echoed through the whole book. We keep getting this repetition of behold.
Yes.
We keep getting these odd moments of biblical language, of high language. And that also makes me wonder about the narrative voice.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back and read this whole thing again and try and really pin
absolutely.
down
Yeah.
how the narrator changes and moves and shifts.
And like who it is,
Exactly.
issue to issue.
Yes. Yeah.
So we see all of this. We see Virginia basically losing it. She's
Yeah,
screaming.
she kills the dog.
She kills the dog, bashes the dog up against the wall.
Yeah, and Vision then encounters at the door of the cell as he's about to encounter Victor. He sees Wanda and Agatha approach him, and he
Yes.
says, "I have come to take this boy's life, as he took my boy's life. I would greatly appreciate your cooperation in this matter. However, I do not require your cooperation in this matter." And we see then we cut to Virginia, and we see why she killed the dog. It is to consume the Everbloom petal
Yes.
properly. It requires being hungry the first time, and then after a murder. And so she then takes that so she can see how things are going to play out.
Yes. We get this really lovely conversation between Wanda and Vision where Wanda is basically telling him, you know, we are not like everyone else and we will never be like anyone else. And you are different from everyone. And he basically is just like that. You're totally missing the point. I want to be like everyone else. And he just like phases his hand into her chest and knocks
just,
her out.
That incapacitates her. And then he looks at Agatha and says, am I going to have a problem with you now?
Yeah.
And she's just like,
Will there be more? Or are we finished?
And she just walks away, and she's like, mothers, and just walks away.
Yeah.
And he approaches Victor, and Victor says, I understand. You have to do what you have to do. And he repeats it. I have to do what I have to do. And at that point, a hand comes through Victor's chest, and it's Virginia standing behind him, who pulls out Victor's heart and just says to Vision, your daughter is at home mourning because I told her what I had done to her friend. She requires you to be there, and I will see you at home later.
And then she's just gone.
To what degree is Virginia, in this moment, Wanda Maximoff?
100,000%, right? Like 1,000,000,000%.
The worst possible thing for the best possible reason.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
The ending narration to this comic may be my favorite little bit of all of it. It says, Vision fought this code. Well, it says, destiny is a code given to all of us. Vision fought this code and saved the world. Victor fought this code and saved himself. Virginia fought this code and saved her daughter. It's her talking to her daughter. I don't know if this is a message she left for her, but she says, I fought this code and saved you.
Well, and what's really interesting is that the speech bubbles that we get for this narration, we find out that it's Virginia doing this narration, but it's the red block with the white text, which is the exact same speech bubble you get for Wanda later when Wanda is narrating, and also when Agatha was narrating before. Like, it's just this whole linear thing with these women telling this myth, and it's just God, it's so good.
It's finishing up the bit of discussion that we kind of skipped over, which was Virginia talking to Viv and explaining to her that no matter how the scenario plays out, if Vision kills Victor, the Avengers will then kill him.
And they'll shut us down.
And then they'll shut us down, view us as a danger, and shut me down, shut you down. And if he stops, this will still play. She can't figure out a way that this doesn't play out this way. And this is why she shows up and she does it. And we're going to learn in the next issue what her plan was for that, to protect her daughter. And that's what that ending monologue is telling us, that yes, this was for you. I was saving you.
Yeah.
And we get issue 12 with Virginia calling Detective Lynn, and she begins to tell him, it says, this is the story that she told. And she talks basically through everything that has happened in the series, but gives it a bit of a twist, saying that she altered Vision to make him do what he had done. And basically makes it to where she is completely culpable for everything, and that everyone else is innocent in the situation. And that she just saw no other way around what had to have happened. And as she's talking, she takes that drink from the floating water vase.
Yeah, which is symbolism.
Yep. Then we see the Vision has returned back home. He walks into the house, and we just have narration going on over this point. And he changes out of his like kick-ass superhero outfit. He's putting back his shirt and his tie on, and he sees Virginia's on the couch, and she tells him that Viv is upstairs. And I love this too. So Virginia says, Viv is upstairs. She continues to be upset about my role in the death of CK. She is refusing to talk to me. Vision says, I see. And then Virginia looks up and goes, also, I killed the dog.
And she explains to him that she uploaded the confession, but then she starts breaking, having a hard time speaking, and explains that she drank from the floating vase and is poisoning her. And Vision says, just phase. The poison will go through you. And she says, no. And she says, come, sit with me, husband. Let me rest against you. My head is heavy, and I would enjoy putting it on your shoulder. And then we do get that beautiful scene of just her resting her head on his shoulder, and he complies and sits next to her. They sit together there, and he says he will correct the embellishments of her confession, and she tells him not to.
No, you will not. Such corrections would result in your imprisonment and the isolation and or death of our daughter. And Vision starts with, I am Vision of the Avengers, and Virginia interrupts him and says, you are my husband. You are the father of my children. All the rest just goes, and she starts breaking it and then dies. Dies in Vision's arms.
She slowly starts to pass, but then she says, what I really like is she says, I saw you destroy the future for us, for me. And I could not. You saved the world 37 times. I saved it once. It was nice.
And he says, no, my love, it was kind. And then she starts to admonish him, being like, why must you always make me? And then she dies. Dies in his arms.
And the narration comes in saying that Virginia did the right thing, or she did the wrong thing, or she just did what everyone does. She saved what she could. And we see that this narration now is Wanda talking to Virginia, which I love.
To Viv.
To Viv, yeah.
To Viv. And which I love. They're having their walk, and she says, my hope is that you will see all of this, all of that, and still love her. And
also, BT Dubs, I'm your mom.
By the way, I'm your mom?
Yeah.
Do you know Billy and Tommy? They're your siblings. They also are twins, and so I guess you're triplets.
Kind of long story.
Confusing.
And I like Viv's question to Wanda. She says, I don't understand. Parents sacrifice their lives for their children. Then children become parents and sacrifice their lives. And so all this is sacrificed and nothing is gained. Life then becomes a pursuit of an unobtainable purpose by absurd means. And Wanda says, Portia in the Merchant of Venice, she brings up Merchant of Venice again. Yes. She says, one half of me is yours, the other half yours. Mine own, I would say, but if mine, then yours. And so also yours.
And then Wanda brings back Sparky the dog.
Yeah, she says, I have a gift for you.
Because with a little magic and a little Tony Stark, the impossible is ever possible.
Right.
And gives Viv her dog back,
I like
which
she says,
really like.
And something to share with your handsome, what did she say? Sorry.
That handsome father of yours,
she
right?
says, something that you can share with that handsome, stubborn father of yours.
Yes.
And she whistles and the dog comes and she's elated. And then we skip 2 months and we see back at home, Vision is there with his daughter, preparing her for school, asking, did you make your lunch? And she said,
I don't eat. I didn't make a lunch.
She said, well, I thought you would maybe want to be normal. And she says, 2 months ago, my uncle killed my brother. In response, my mother killed my uncle, then killed herself. And now I am a teenage synthezoid being raised by an Avenger. I am not normal, father. And she kisses him on the cheek. He says he should have done better. And she leaves for school, and Vision heads back inside, opening a box, telling the dog to shh like it's a secret, and begins to work on a mechanical body while singing Row, Row, Row Your Boat, the song that his wife would often sing, ending the comic with the line, life is but a dream.
And that is the Vision series.
It's extraordinary.
It's really
just
good.
Extraordinary.
Yeah.
And to anchor it in these 2 points, I guess, at the end, the two things that really just knocked me out about the ending. The first, of course, being that very literary callback to the previously established arc words of this series. She dies because the poison does not pass through her.
Yes.
Okay, that's the choice that you get to make. The choice that you get to make is to be in the world. And she makes that choice much more effectively than Vision does.
Yes.
And then Viv gets to make her own version of that choice, which is to not be normal, to not live by the standards of others, but she is going to be herself, whatever that means. She is going to be the teenage synthezoid, and that's going to work out just fine for her.
And she's going to join up with like Miles Morales and Kamala Khan and be part of the Champions, and it's going to be great.
It's actually amazing that Marvel takes this very original story that's told and lets it actually have implications in their universe.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that Viv actually does continue. I don't know that they've ever touched on what was happening there at the very end with Vision, because Vision goes on and returns back to the Avengers and deals with some other things that were happening. And I've read some of that, but it doesn't really touch back on this very much. But Champions is the book that picks back up with Viv if you want to continue her story after this. And she does very much so feel the ramifications of the story, and she addresses it and she talks about it as the story goes through, and she feels those emotions, and that does continue on and is not forgotten.
It's a remarkable accomplishment, a remarkable achievement, and you're absolutely right. Almost unique. In the Marvel Universe, particularly over the last, decade or two.
Sure.
Where we've been faced with constant events and then constant reboots in the 616. This is the kind of story that I feel like we used to get. It's interesting looking back at Vision's, greatest hits, calling back to Onslaught and calling back to Galactus and the Kree-Skrull War and all of these huge events that really
Ultron
did leave,
again.
Ultron again, which really did leave the world changed. They left the 616 universe changed. This feels like that kind of story. It feels like, in a weird way, a relic of an older time, and yet could only be told now. The combination of the 616 of it all, the Marvel-ness of it all, and this broadly applicable, incredibly detailed, incredibly thoughtful and conscious metaphor.
Yes.
It blew me away. I was not expecting it to be this good, even with my expectations raised about as high as they can be raised.
Sure.
For a Marvel series right now. I was expecting it to be good. It turned out great. I am in for Tom King.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So I also encourage everyone to read the leather pages from this comic. You'd have to get the single issues to do that. I think they're available on the digital ones as well.
Or wait for that mythical, hopeful, we're all keeping our fingers crossed.
Because Tom King is delightful. And the fact that leather pages aren't usually collected in trade formats like they aren't in these 2 volumes, may be the biggest crime of the century. Because leather pages are so amazing.
Well, this was very good, you guys. This episode went very, very long, but I'm okay with it because
I'm feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is going to be one where we'll turn off the microphones and go out to the porch and talk a little more about it.
Probably so, absolutely, yeah. So what are we doing next week, you guys?
Next week we are looking at a classic from the MCU. We are looking at Captain America, the First Avenger.
Yes, I'm very, very excited about that. We're going to have a lot of fun doing that.
All the way back to Phase 1.
I know.
Hey, remember Phase 1?
Hey, do you remember when
The world was so simple.
so many years ago?
We were such innocents, such wide-eyed
What year
innocents.
did that movie come out?
2011, I want to say, without looking at notes. I might correct that on next week's show.
That sounds good. Yep, no, it's probably great.
Yeah, we hope to look at all 3 Captain America movies. Probably not in a row. We'll probably slip things in between.
Sure,
there. But
absolutely.
it'll be really interesting to go movie by movie through the Captain America movies, and then at the end of that, discuss the whole and how it works as a trilogy.
Is Cap our favorite MCU character? I mean, Spidey obviously is going to threaten that pretty soon. But of the Avengers, particularly of the Phase 1 Avengers, is Cap our go-to guy?
I don't think he's my go-to guy in necessarily any sense of that word, but I do think he is the one who has had the best solo storytelling. Like, he's had the best story given to us.
Yeah, I think that Tony might actually be my favorite because I mean, like, just Robert Downey Jr. as Tony is Tony Stark is Tony Stark and does an amazing job. But I mean, like, Iron Man 3 wasn't that great. Like,
right.
Fair.
You know,
2 wasn't that great.
2 wasn't that,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
you know, Iron Man was pretty good, but I mean, like, whenever I think of, you know, who is my favorite, like, Avenger, like the Avengers, I'm like, I just want to watch, like, Avengers and Age of Ultron. That's my favorite. That's what I want to do, is just take part in that. But I do really, really enjoy Cap's films, and it'll be really fun to, because I haven't actually seen the first Avenger in a long time.
That'll be great.
So yeah, it'll be good to go through there again. And plus, we get Peggy Carter.
get
And okay,
Peggy
you know who's my
Carter,
favorite?
right.
Peggy Carter is my favorite. That's what it comes down to.
But yeah, Cap has had the best story, I think, tracing through those 3 movies and joining in the Avengers movies in between them. He just has had the best narrative run of any of our MCU so far.
See, I'm very lucky because I completely agree with that. And also, Cap is my guy.
There you go. See, so you get the best of all worlds.
I'm really looking forward to next week's show, you
Awesome.
guys.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for this extra long episode. If you want to get in touch with us, you can do so over on Twitter at Excelsior Cast. You can get in touch with me personally at Elsa Grab the Salt.
And get in touch with me at Paper Bullets.
And I'm at Flesh Eater.
If you liked what we do over here on this show, if you want more of this thing, if you want us to do, I don't know, live Q&As or like read comic books aloud around a table.
If you've had your heart broken by Vision and you just need us to stroke your hair for a while, we can
which
do
we
that.
totally can do
We're
that
here
thing.
for you.
Yes, we're here for that. Head on over to patreon.com/Common Room Radio, where you can kick us $1 a month or whatever you can afford, and we will drive to your house and pet your hair and tell you that everything is going to be okay, but only if you want that. You can head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and a review over there. Help us to knock up those not knock up those charts, crawl up those charts. I'm going to try all of that again. We don't want to get.
I
the
liked
charts
it. I thought it was
right.
working.
Yeah, all right.
Help us impregnate iTunes with podcast babies. That's what we want.
You know what? No, yeah, I'm going to leave it. That sounds great. Yeah, and next week we're talking about Captain America: The First Avenger, and I think that's basically going to be it. So once again, from Common Room Radio, I'm Sarah K. Bazan.
I'm Alistair Stevens.
And I'm Vinton Bain. And I really want you to join us next time on the podcast. And I would greatly appreciate your cooperation in this matter. However, I do not require your cooperation in this matter.